Yo, what is going on, guys? Flashverse here, and welcome back to another video on The Flash Season 8, and this will be my review and breakdown for The Flash Season 8 Episode 10, titled Reckless. And just giving you guys my quick initial thoughts on this episode before I go more in detail with a review and, well, a more in-depth breakdown as well. This episode. Yikes, that's all I could really say. Just yikes. I did not like this episode. I would say that this episode was an incredibly useless and just waste of an episode in my opinion. There was absolutely nothing which pushed this story forward. I did not care for the Frost story one bit. Our main character got thrown into the sidelines once again and did nothing. There was no character development at all. Nothing. And in all honesty, I would probably say that this is the worst episode of the season. And yes, that includes the Goldface episode as well. I would say this episode's worse than the Goldface episode. There was only one aspect of this episode I liked, and that was the Iris stuff. This mystery with the time sickness, I'm really invested in that story, and I do really like it. I'm really interested in it. I guess the ending was pretty good. It was definitely very anticlimactic due to them revealing beforehand that Ronnie would be returning to the show. But other than that, this was an utter waste of an episode and I'm incredibly disappointed. Fair enough if some of you guys enjoyed this episode, obviously that's your opinion, I would never go at you for that. If you guys enjoyed it, then that's perfectly fine. I just wasn't a fan of this episode. I understand that this graphic novel is pretty lengthy. For those who don't know, it's going to be till episode 14. So I guess we are bound to have some filler, but tied to the main story that goes nowhere at some point. But making it an episode centered around Frost certainly did not help at all, and I wasn't a fan of this episode, as I said. But next episode does look pretty interesting, so I'm gonna keep my hopes up for next episode because that does genuinely look like a quite an interesting episode. It's just this episode, I guess it was just there to, act as a filler where, as I said before, it's tied to the main story, but it's just there as part of the graphic novel to waste time due to it being such a lengthy graphic novel, if you know what I mean. So hopefully it's just this episode that was just bound to be bad, and then the rest of the remaining episodes are going to be really good. But yeah, now going into the breakdown itself. So for those who haven't seen the episode, then of course, spoiler alert, because this is a review and breakdown after all. So I'll be going over some major spoilers, which you certainly wouldn't want to hear from me. So for those who haven't watched the episode, go watch the episode and then come back later for this breakdown. But for those who are staying, be sure to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you are aware of more Arrowverse content coming your way. Okay, so this episode kicks off with a very interesting reveal in regards to what's going on with Iris's time sickness. We have Dion revealing that due to him undoing this treatment on Iris during Armageddon, this led to Iris pretty much being displaced through time. Pretty much her time sickness has gotten worse. This does not make any sense at all because technically that timeline never existed because Barry reversed everything. So pretty much, Reverse Flashpoint wouldn't have happened if Barry restored the timeline back to how it was. So everything prior would not have happened. Despero would have never attacked Barry. Barry would have never sought help from Black Lightning. And Iris would have never gone to Dion for the train station because Joe wouldn't have died. So it doesn't make sense. So I would say it's kind of a plot hole. But I don't know, maybe I'm just not thinking straight. Maybe the Still Force works like the Speed Force, where the user would just remember the timelines prior. I'm not entirely sure, but again, they did not really explain it properly, and for me at least, it didn't make that much sense. For anyone who understands it, be sure to clarify in the comment section down below because, as I said, I don't understand it. But yeah, Iris's time sickness, as I said, it's getting worse and worse, but Iris is only able to have temporary treatments because Dion doesn't even know what's going on. It's that serious. Of course, we do have Iris filling in Barry with all of this, in which, of course, Barry is worried about this because it is that serious that Dion doesn't even know what's going on. But Dion advises, at least for the time being, for Iris to pretty much stay put and do nothing just to prevent any more outbreaks happening. But obviously, that doesn't happen, and it does have a pretty interesting ending, and I will obviously get to that later on. Now, as I said prior, I did not like how this episode went, and I wasn't, too much of a fan of the Frost stuff. And I didn't like how this was a Frost-centered episode. They did not give me a reason to, really care about her. But we have Frost pretty much doing some art at her apartment, in which she then ends up sweating, which is obviously something unusual for someone like her. But she goes to check the temperature, and this results to her getting attacked by the Black Flame. But it doesn't kill her. Of course, from this and previous teases we had about this graphic novel, we already knew what was going on. So just because of that, the mystery wasn't really that big, which is really annoying because if they did not reveal that Ronnie would be returning, it would have been such a big shock and just an insane twist. I just don't understand why they would reveal something like this, because just think about the ending of this episode and think about it. If we didn't know Ronnie was going to be returning, it would have worked as such a great reveal, and they could have left these things like the Black Flame attacking Frost but not killing her, just like these little hints to, okay, it could maybe be Ronnie. They could have done something like that instead of just revealing that Ronnie would be returning this season. So they could have made it work so much better, and honestly I do wish that they never told us that Ronnie would be returning, because that ending would have been really, really sick if they did that. But we do then have Team Flash at the CCC media, and they're talking about the Black Flame and what's going on with that. They do then find out how this pattern of grief could have just been a coincidence, like it doesn't have anything to do with it. For example, Joe does mention that this yoga coach or something, she did complete grief counseling, so it's just the Black Flame coincidentally attacked people who are grieving. And the same thing applies for Chester. Chester wasn't feeling grief. His father passed years ago. And of course, same thing with Frost. She wasn't grieving at all. She was just doing a normal piece of art. So the motivation for the Black Flame is still pretty unknown. We do then have Barry and Frost in Star Labs, and Frost does mention her encounter with the Black Flame as Barry obviously patches her up. And we do then have Frost paying a visit to Dr. Carla Tenhauser, who is pretty much Caitlin, and you could say her mother as well. And we have Frost pretty much mentioning this Black Flame case to her, and she asks for her help to try and find a way to use her as bait, but also find a way to get the Black Flame to attack her so that Team Flash are able to capture it. And Carla pretty much expresses that Frost would be a perfect bait, considering her powers being of cryokinetic energy, which is obviously something heavily tied to the Black Flame. But when they pitch this idea to Team Flash, Barry is not on board with it because it could risk getting Frost killed, and he does not want to take that risk. But Chester does mention that this plan could work if they use the fusion sphere, because it does pretty much, enhance Frost's abilities, if that makes sense. It does spread that cryokinetic energy, which makes it more attracted to the Black Flame. It's something like that. And this could of course help Team Flash capturing the Black Flame. They just got to make modifications to the fusion sphere because it was made for the artificial speed force during season 7. This does eventually lead to Barry walking off because he's not on board with this plan. But Frost does follow after him, and they do talk about this plan. Frost does mention how Iris is told to stay put, yet clearly she isn't doing that at all, in which it is a fair comparison. But Iris's, they're both really bad, but technically Iris's is pretty much worse, you could say, because they know nothing about what's going on with the time sickness. But this does eventually lead to Barry still not being on board with the plan, but he does let Frost follow through with it. But we do then have the team executing the plan, which does eventually lead to the Black Flame getting drawn to the fusion sphere. However, it does not really do anything, it just stays there, which again, it does leave these little hints showing that it does not want to hurt Frost because of obvious reasons. It does look like Caitlin a lot. But Frost obviously begins to attack it, which results in the Black Flame tossing Frost aside, knocking her out. Once again, still not killing her. We do then have Frost waking up in the medbay, and we do see that Caitlin has returned. And that's obviously because she heard about what's going on with Frost. And this time we do have this sisterly conflict going on, which of course it is understandable due to this risk of the plan. It's a really, really big risk because it could have resulted to Frost dying, which is obviously really serious, especially the toll it would take for Caitlin. So these parts were quite well done on Danielle Panabaker's part. She did, of course, have this really, really great scene with her mother as well, when talking about putting Frost in this risky position and how she treats her like an experiment over a daughter, which was a scene that I did really appreciate. Of course, we do have Frost still wanting to follow through with this plan one more time, in which Barry's back to square one. He's still disagreeing with it once again. Now, as I said, these parts of the episode weren't really interesting. It wasn't interesting. I didn't care about it. However, the storyline which I really, really enjoyed was this mini side quest with Iris, Tinya, and Sue, where they obviously try to find Tinya's mother. And Iris does try to access a few files, but she's not able to. And that is until Sue uses her connections with the boss, and that allows the team to track Tinya's birth mother. It's really fun having Sue around, and this dynamic she has with Iris. It's something I did really enjoy, and I do wish that Natalie Dreyfus could still just, remain part of the show, because I do really like this character, and I wish that she could stay. But yeah, as I said, it is really great still having Sue over here, and she's most probably going to be there next episode as well. But we did have some time sickness stuff going on due to the receptionist coming in contact with Iris, and then she does get dispersed in time, if you will. Like, the office is just empty, so I'm guessing she does get lost in time, or she's thrown into the still force or something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but it is really, really interesting. We did then get this Joe and Barry scene where Barry does express why he's not on board with this plan, and he's just so convinced about it. But Joe does also realize that he is also distracted with what's going on with Iris, and that's, just elevating his reasons to why he doesn't let Frost follow through with it. And of course, on Barry's part, it's still a risky plan. Frost could literally die from this, and Iris can get lost in time, and Barry would not be able to do anything about it. But yeah, this time Joe manages to change Barry's mind. It's weird. Like, it's really messy. Like, Barry's just like, oh, I'm not on board with this plan. Oh, well, now I am. Oh, no, never mind, I'm not. And now I am. I didn't really like that. It was quite messy, and it was unnecessary to make Barry's mind change so many times. But yeah, it is what it is, I guess. We didn't have this scene with Carla and Frost where Carla pretty much agrees with Caitlin with the fact that she's kind of been treating her more like an experiment over a daughter. But then Carla reveals that they're gonna find a way to, not only make their relationship better, but of course find a way to help Frost with this, because she does reveal that she's also cryokinetic. So that's pretty much enough energy to fully lure the black flame into the fusion sphere. And I did really love how they acknowledged this, because we had no idea what was going on with this, especially when they teased it during season 5, where it did reveal that Carla was like a Frost meta. But thankfully they did do something with it. We then have Frost using herself as bait once again, this time with Carla with her. And this time the plan does start to work. However, Carla starts to panic and begins to slowly get into cardiac arrest. The black flame is so close to being captured, but this results to Frost pulling Carla out of it, which results to the black flame escaping. As I said, back to square one, took the story absolutely nowhere, and it was an absolute waste of an episode. We do then have Team Flash discussing how this is going to make catching the black flame a lot longer, considering that it was right about to be fully caught until it just ran away. So yeah, Barry and Team Flash will have to struggle for a bit more, and of course it's going to be 4 more episodes, because this graphic novel is going to be until episode 14. We do then head to Coast City, where Tinya confronts her mother, and she explains why she had to let go of Tinya, and she does give her reasons. And they did have this emotional bonding with each other. But this was quite a crazy ending, where Iris's time sickness starts to kick in, and Tinya's mother goes to check out if Iris is okay, and this results to Tinya's mother coming in contact with Iris, and that results to her being dispersed through time, and she pretty much just turns into pure temporal energy. It was really, really cool, and as I said, this was a storyline I really, really enjoyed about this episode, and I'm really, really interested in it. But the episode ends with Caitlin in her apartment, where the black flame pops up again, this time speaking to Caitlin and mentioning a couple of lines very, very familiar to Caitlin, and that is of course something Ronnie said to her back in season 1. So yeah, Caitlin does obviously realize this, and it does pretty much reveal that the Black Flame is Ronnie Raymond, so we were all right, I guess. It was a really cool ending, I'll admit that, and I'm really interested to see where the storyline now goes. But as I said, this would have been such an insane twist if they did not reveal that Ronnie was going to be returning earlier on in this season. So I did really wish that they just didn't reveal that Robbie Amell was going to be returning for the season, because if they didn't, this would have been such a great ending scene in my opinion. But yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, as I said, overall, I did really like the Iris storyline, and I guess the ending was pretty cool. But other than that, it was a waste of an episode. I didn't like the episode. It took the story nowhere. I guess we're back to square one now. But yeah, guys, thanks for watching. If you guys have enjoyed the video, please give a like and subscribe. Be sure to tell me in the comment section down below if you guys enjoyed this episode. And yeah, I will see you guys in my next video.